In the quiet of Oakwood Park, beneath the shade of a sycamore tree, a man sat dignified, calm, and invisible to some. But on this morning, a simple act of peace became a flashpoint for justice. When authority met history, one voice stood firm, and an entire town was forced to listen. This is not just a story about confrontation. It's about memory, dignity, and the quiet strength that refuses to fade. The morning sun spilled softly across Oakwood Park, casting a golden hue over its dew-speckled grass and worn cobblestone paths. Birds chirped in harmony with the distant sound of children playing. It was the kind of morning that felt sacred, especially to Charles Thompson. Charles, 78, sat quietly on his favorite bench beneath the sycamore tree. Dressed in pressed slacks and a wool cardigan, he cradled a worn copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time in his lap. His hands steady, dark, and lined with decades of struggle and resilience, rested calmly as he watched the park breathe around him. He had been coming here every morning for the last 35 years. He helped plant this tree. He helped integrate this park. He wasn't just part of Oakwood. He was Oakwood. The crunch of boots on gravel pulled Charles from his thoughts. A young officer approached, walking fast, posture stiff, eyes squinting with purpose. "Sir," the officer said, adjusting the strap of his utility vest. "What are you doing here?" Charles looked up, his face a picture of composed clarity. "Enjoying the morning, officer. This area is for local residents only. I'm going to need to see some ID." Charles closed his book slowly. "I've lived on Aspen Street since 1971. "That's not what I asked," the officer snapped, fingers twitching near his belt. "Identification. Now." Charles said nothing. He had faced men like this before, tight-lipped, eyes filled with unchecked authority, ears closed to truth. He wasn't angry. He was tired. Tired of this script playing on repeat. "My name is Charles Thompson. I served in the 1967 protests that made this park public. I helped write the petition that integrated these benches. You can check the plaque under that tree." The officer glanced, uninterested. "If you don't provide ID, I'll have to detain you for loitering." Charles stood slowly, each movement measured and deliberate. "Son, I've been sitting on this bench longer than you've been alive." Tension rose like a thundercloud. The officer reached for his cuffs. Then came a second pair of footsteps from across the lawn. A man in plain clothes approached, his presence heavy and calm. His voice was low but firm. "Officer Daniels." The young man froze. Mid-reach, he turned, eyes widening as recognition hit. "Chief Mitchell, Chief Raymond." Mitchell nodded once. He was an imposing man. Not by size, but by gravity. Oakwood's first black police chief. He was known for walking neighborhoods, not just patrolling them. A man who knew names, not just laws. "I saw everything," Mitchell said. "Step back." Officer Daniels's jaw clenched. "Sir, I thought you didn't think." "That's the problem." Mitchell turned to Charles, his face softening. "Mr. Thompson, I am deeply sorry." Charles offered a slight nod. Not of forgiveness, but of acknowledgement. "You have nothing to apologize for, Chief." The silence hung thick. Then Mitchell spoke again, this time to the officer. "You were about to arrest the man who made this park open to you." Officer Daniels looked down, shame rising to his cheeks. Mitchell's voice remained controlled. "You were not trained to interrogate citizens without cause, and you definitely weren't trained to harass community elders." Daniels stammered, "I didn't know who he was." "And that's exactly the problem," Mitchell replied. "You didn't care to find out." News of the confrontation spread quickly. Someone had filmed it, a jogger with a quiet sense of justice, and posted it online. The video, titled "Elderly Man Harassed for Sitting in His Own Park," reached thousands within hours. But something remarkable happened. Instead of rage alone, the video sparked conversation. At a town hall meeting days later, Mitchell invited Charles to speak. Charles, hesitant at first, stood before a packed auditorium of young faces, tired parents, and wary officers. He told the story of Oakwood Park, of the days when black families weren't allowed past the gates, of the summer he was arrested for picnicking too close to the playground, of the nights he and others sat in silent protest, occupying benches until the city relented. "This bench," he said, voice low but unshakable, "was not given to us. It was earned. This park was built on protest, patience, and pain. So when a young officer sees an old black man and thinks criminal before neighbor, we haven't made as much progress as we think." Silence fell like a blanket. Then, applause erupted, not the polite kind, but the kind that came from deep recognition. The mayor, visibly moved, called for reforms within the department. Officer Daniels, to his credit, requested to speak last. With trembling hands, he stepped forward. "I grew up in Oakwood," he said. "I thought I understood justice, but I didn't understand history. I didn't understand people." He turned to Charles. "You didn't deserve what I did. I am sorry. Not just to you, but to every person I failed to see." In the weeks that followed, Oakwood changed not in the flashy political sense, but in the quiet, meaningful way that lasts. Officer Daniels entered community service and began attending local history classes, led by Charles and his neighbors. Together, they started the Bench Project, a program where stories from elders were engraved onto small, brass plaques placed on benches across town. Charles's plaque read, "This bench belongs to everyone, no matter where you come from. Sit and be seen." The incident also inspired Chief Mitchell to create the Community Immersion Program, requiring all new officers to spend their first 3 weeks walking neighborhoods, attending cultural events, and learning about the people they serve before ever putting on a badge. For Charles, life returned to quiet mornings. He still came to the park, still sat on that bench. But now, sometimes, a young officer would join him, asking questions not with suspicion, but with curiosity. One morning, Daniels came alone, carrying 2 coffees. "I heard you like yours black with no sugar," he said. Charles chuckled. "Only way to drink it." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunrise. 2 generations learning to see each other. And though Charles never sought the spotlight, he had become something more than a man on a bench. He was a living reminder that dignity doesn't fade with age, that justice must be protected by those in power, and that the fight for equality is not a moment, it is a lifetime. He once said to a group of students gathered for a history tour, "Progress isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like a conversation. Sometimes it sounds like silence. But you'll know it when you feel it. Right here." He tapped his chest, and the kids listened, really listened. Because when a man like Charles speaks, you don't just hear him, you remember him, forever.